Now, it's easy to look at an anime as popular as Your Name and be overly cynical because something was ate up not only just by anime fans, but those who may have no idea what anime is, and there's no way it could really live up to the hype. But Your Name is a special film that no matter how much time passes, how many times I watch this story play out, I leave just as moved as the first time around. Everyone should watch Your Name, and if somehow you know nothing past the most basic details to this film, watch it before carrying on with this video, as I will be touching on a few key spoilers. Your Name follows our two central leads, Taki and Mitsuha. Somehow, each are connected to the other through fate and the strands of time, and with much confusion for the both of them. Some days when they wake up, they are in the other's bodies. Not knowing why or how, they learn to navigate the other's life while leaving pointers, notes, ground rules, and updates for the other, so when they return, they are caught up to date with what's happened when they are away and how they should go about the other's life. But the reason this body-swapping story is truly special is because not only is it one of the most touching romance tales out there, it's that the twist is something few anime can compete with. That being that they are 3 years apart from the other, and in Mitsuha's time, a meteor breaks apart which kills her and her town. With how much this film aims to tell, it's stunning with how well the pacing to the story flows, as really nothing is left behind, and this film was truly the perfect length. Past a life or death situation, there's a handful of unique traits that Your Name explores that truly turn it into a masterpiece. The first half of the movie explores what many are typically used to in body-swapping tales, how they deal with their new life. And as you would expect for teenage characters being swapped into the opposite sex's body, it will cause for curiosity to get the best of them. And while these moments did get a chuckle out of me, what truly sold me on these simple scenes was how believable and wholesome they typically were. For Taki, he's a man who struggles with emotions and communication as a whole. He'd rather get into fights and talk things out. If he has a crush, he'd bottle it up and waste his opportunity, even if she liked him as well. But when Mitsuha takes over, his feminine side can pop out, and in doing so, those around him recognize him being more than just a one-note guy, and rather than fumble or punch his way out of situations, Mitsuha is able to guide him into having that more emotional touch that he desperately needs. With her, she is too emotional for her own good, timid and shy, and really doesn't stand her ground, which in doing so, makes it so she ends up getting walked on by family and those who want nothing more than to just bring her down. When Taki takes over, though he might be too wild on some occasions, at others he really lets her stand her ground so others will stop walking all over her, while also allowing her to have more fun than her straight and narrow lifestyle typically has her following. Each are struggling in their life, and though these swaps generally will do more harm than good, at least at the start, as they make things an absolute mess, I adored how the few instances of the other setting their lives in the correct direction, be it standing their ground or showing a softer side, allowed for them to come back to a life that was more en route to what they wanted but didn't have the determination to do themselves. The simple montage near the beginning of how they adjusted their new life was adorable and brought a grin to my face, as they blended humorous moments with such teenage antics that were some of the best that I've seen in anime. Thinking if that were me, yeah, I'd probably act the same, just as confused and curious as they were, which I think is a common thought for most viewers. As rather than going overblown, they keep it realistic so the viewer feels as if this is a real story with a slightly supernatural twist to it. Which honestly, with how they explored the body swapping up to this point, was enough for me to appreciate and recommend this film. But when the twist comes that they are 3 years apart, that's where the film truly set itself apart from the crowd. The idea of a clearly growing love but separated by time is quite unique for body swapping tales, especially ones with a workable time difference of only a few years, which is why the second twist of Mitsuha dying is what ties this whole package together so elegantly. The viewer notices that even though Taki has a crush at the beginning of the film, once he starts swapping with Mitsuha, he stops focusing on Miss Okadira and puts his focus on Mitsuha. And when the swapping stops, their lives get turned upside down and lets the viewer experience a tale that plays with our anxiety. In terms of this being a body swapping tale, this has to have the best pacing and development I've ever seen for the style of stories seen here. Starting off with confusion, which even for the viewer makes you question what's happening at first, leading the viewer to question why they are acting so strangely, to then the realization of what's going on, to the clever technique of passing notes to the days, and also rules to follow while they inhabit the other's body. There's a steady but gradual pace to get the viewer on board with their relationship without needing them to actually meet. Nothing feels forced, but rather natural, and without needing words to be spoken, you recognize and appreciate the growing love. So when the viewer learns that Mitsuha is destined to die 3 years prior to where Taki is, it's heart-wrenching. Something that seems so wholesome that you think all they need to do is meet up, pick a spot. Even if one is 3 years older, they can be together, to then the crushing realization that she dies from a beautiful meteor. You're left speechless and scared to see how this tale will end. When the film decided to up the pace, raise the stakes and overall tension, it became simply phenomenal. There's a mysterious and supernatural way for the two's connection to work, the way the threads of time tangles. The viewer never needs a scientific explanation, but the almost spiritual way they go about exploring this anomaly is incredibly effective. It allows for the two's growing romance to feel as if it's stronger than time itself, and even if the wheels of fate has one lined up for a horrible catastrophe, you hope that love can conquer all. Many stories that would try to go this extreme would make the fatal mistake of trying to explain too much and keeping the focus off of what's truly important, that being our characters. With Your Name, there's enough detail to the plot mechanics while leaving the extra bits of info up to the viewer watching to piece together however they see fit in an open-ended fashion. In doing so, it allows for the film to avoid having quote-unquote plot holes, as dealing with time typically has many, while allowing for the main focus to be on our central duo and their love that unfortunately is being separated with the uncertainty of whether or not they can be together. The way they swap bodies, communicate, and how the threads of time intertwine to allow these strange occurrences never is overly technical, while giving us just enough information to make us appreciate this as being something more than just a story that just works, but rather the way the spiritual connections function in this film makes sense for their reality. The film also made sure to have a relatively small cast of characters, despite having a story this massive that by the end of the film deals with the lives of an entire town. Instead of Taki or Mitsuha having a bunch of friends, they have one or two, with a couple of family members only really being the focus for each of their lives. We have a limited runtime, so letting the focus be on just a handful of characters rather than a dozen lets us get to know everyone fairly quickly and start caring for them alongside our central duo. You understand the personal connections, the romantic undertones, and how their daily lives function without feeling one got overshadowed or left behind in favor of another. Stories surrounding love, especially ones that aren't meant to be, usually will hit that sweet spot for me, as I'm a sucker for those tales that break barriers and prove that even if all odds are against them, they find a way to be together. Two body-swapping teenagers separated by fate itself, and how they will overcome this obstacle is one of the best executed romance stories I've ever experienced, as it would be so easy to make this a simple tale with very little thought put into anything past the swapping of bodies. But the fact that Shinkai went the route of not only stopping the swapping pretty early into the film, with not only separating them by time, but also forcing a natural disaster upon them. The struggles of saving the lives of countless people and finding a way to be with the other is gripping like no other romance story I've seen. To be able to grow and fall in love with the other without needing to actually meet face to face, but seeing what kind of person they are as you live their life and come back to see how they lived yours is truly touching. But how far each are willing to go to break time itself to be with each other is what's truly magical. The art that is show, don't tell is underutilized far more than I appreciate in the anime medium. From how the time mechanics work to how the spiritual connections of the Mizumiya family occur, and how the ending goes about wrapping up the story flawlessly while letting the viewer finish the rest in their heads, they layer in enough information while the viewer pieces together the smaller details in a way that works for them. In doing so, we can walk out of a story that not only delivered one of the best romance stories anime has ever seen, but also a tale with a unique group of characters with fun personalities and struggles they are dealing with to make them feel like people rather than a plot device to be used with a life or death twist to tie it all together. Body swapping is a very unique premise that really isn't utilized properly from all the stories I've experienced up till now. However, mix it with romance and a natural disaster twist helmed by Makoto Shinkai, and you get a recipe for success which will be a global phenomenon. With some stories, you're thankful for the format they made it in, which is exactly how I felt seeing Your Name be a movie and not a TV production. Wherever you decide to look at this film, you'll be taken back by its beauty, the photorealistic backgrounds that really make nature and day-to-day life come across as stunning and magical, with how beautifully they were framed to properly capture this scenery. No matter what the scene was, a town landscape, a garden to a school setting, each background was detailed to be as photorealistic as possible that, though, yes you do know it's a drawing, with how much detail went into these areas that unless you zoom in, you won't be able to notice, it does make you take a second glance on more than one occasion, as sometimes it can be hard to tell it's a drawing, especially when it came to the nature scenery. As someone who looks for high quality background art more than your average viewer, this film was a visual treat and provided many screen caps that I still use on rotation for wallpapers, even to this day. The designs for all its characters felt as if they had a blend of typical anime design with a sprinkle of Western influence. Each have a sense of personality, and rather than feeling as if they're just another high school character, I never found myself comparing them to any other characters from different anime with a similar setting, thanks to their overall unique designs full of care and polish. The character animation was expressive with the body language and reactions from all of the characters. Even in mundane scenes with characters just traveling, there's small yet noticeable details with how each of them moved around to let it feel as if they were a real person rather than a 2D drawing. It's easy to forget how distinct we all move even if we're just walking down the street, but when you really focus in on how each of these characters move around, you'll pick up on the small yet important details that help set them apart from the other, especially seen by Mitsuha's younger sister with her more energetic and sporadic movements. The film manages to be gorgeous in the most basic of shots. Even if not much was actually moving around on screen, they made sure you had something gorgeous to look at, with its phenomenal background art to even well-framed shots on the characters themselves. But when it did move around, the spectacle was stunning, especially seen in the dramatic scenes when stakes were at an all-time high. When they needed to spice up the already stunning visuals, it blew me away by how well they could enhance an already impressive art style, from the sky exploding to a more spiritual scene. I've watched Your Name 4 times at this point in time, 2 times in the original Japanese dub and 2 times in the English dub. And as for my personal preference, it's either. I think Your Name is a special film that whether you are a dub or a sub enthusiast, you have a fantastic way to experience this story. Both dubs I felt a sense of passion from their actors, with how each would change up their voice when they swapped into the other's bodies, as how a girl talks like a guy with how a guy talks like a girl. In both versions, I adored how their voices evolved over the course of this story, with a great emphasis put on emotion, from the raw and heart-throbbing scenes to the romantic bliss that fills the two's minds. The voice acting felt human, with real emotional weight put behind every scene, so whether we were in an intense sequence of life or death to a simple moment between high school friends, it's some of my favorite voice acting across all of anime, with one of my personal favorite English dubs to ever be made. The soundtrack is majestic, from upbeat tracks making us feel like kids again with not a single care in the world, such as on the tracks School Road and Itomori High School, to the slow acoustic pieces meant to bring out those vulnerable emotions, such as the theme of Miss Ogadira, to even those slow piano pieces meant to make you tear up, such as on the tracks Library or the theme of Mitsuba. The wide variety of unique styles of music seen in this OST allows for each scene, no matter what it may be, whether that's a more peaceful slice of life moment to even an intense and dramatic situation revolving around the fate of an entire town. The soundtrack allowed for this anime to be filled with the appropriate music to bring out our deepest and rawest emotions, with even the smallest details with the sound effects. Though this may not be the most action-oriented series you'll watch, it didn't stop the team from making sure the small but important details, such as footsteps or general sounds in the background from vehicles passing by to just wildlife, being relevant to nearly every scene to give those realistic details to its world. Your Name was strong with a premise such as this, but backed by the raw and real emotional acting was small and important details to help bring out a realistic atmosphere, so everyone can walk out of this film feeling as if this was a real story and not just a simple piece of animation that we will forget about in a week. So, can you tell how much I adore this film yet? There's a reason why Your Name was a global phenomenon. That whether you knew what anime was or not, people were talking about Your Name. It's a masterpiece and deserves nothing less than that word. The reason it became the highest grossing anime in Japanese film, why sites that record anime rankings have it near or at the top, it's because for most who watch, they don't walk out thinking of major faults or what went wrong, but rather how unique of a story it actually was, and it felt truly special, where you might walk into the film thinking, oh, this will just be Freaky Friday the anime, but really it ends up becoming the best take on body swapping media has ever seen, with one of the rawest and most gripping romance stories in anime period. That instead of body swapping being a gimmick, it was used as true character growth and bonding that, though may have a supernatural and spiritual twist wrapped up into the threads of time, it never oversteps those boundaries, so it still feels genuine and completely human because of the real relationships being formed. I obviously award Your Name my ultimate seal of approval, and usually I'd just say go watch it if you haven't already, but I'd also recommend picking up a Blu-ray, as this anime is so beautiful it deserves the highest quality viewing possible. It took me a while to review this gem, but I like to drop surprises every once in a while when people least expect it. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on Your Name or this review down in that comment section below. Remember to leave a like if you did enjoy and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. And lastly, there's my Patreon if you want to go the extra mile and help support what I do around here even more, that is if you so wish. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.